Hi, I'm Charlie. I run a cabinet making business in Melbourne. We focus on complex 6 and 7 figure joinery packages that leave little room for error. When we receive a set of architectural drawings, there's a layer of review that happens before anything gets built. Today, I want to walk you through what that process looks like. We're going to walk through four things: structural support, services integration, appliances, and how we consider the user experience. We'll go through specific examples and walk through the reasoning behind each decision. When it comes to structural support, one of the most common things we look at are island bench overhangs. If it's a reconstituted stone or a material that doesn't require a lot of support, we just need to make sure that our substrate construction is really sturdy. If there are any joints in our substrate, we want to make sure that they're staggered away from the stone joints. If the overhang is larger, say 350 or 400 mil, or the stone material itself is likely to crack, that's where we need to add steel into the substrate. Normally that means using 30, 40 or 50 mil steel welded into a frame. It also means that the stone apron itself needs to increase in thickness to allow for that steel structure, along with a cosmetic underpanel to hide the steel. But if the design must have a thin edge, say 40 mil, that's where we can do steel outriggers that taper in height upwards from the cabinets to the stone edge. That gives the overhang plenty of support whilst maintaining the thin profile, and it leaves space for an angled underpanel to go underneath the overhang. All this gets resolved in the shop drawing stage so that the architect can have clarity in the design outcome and we know exactly what we're going to build. We often also need to consider what's going on top of the joinery. Take this low living room unit, for example. It has a heavy fireplace that's going to be sitting on top of the stone bench. Below the fireplace is a firewood box made from 5mm thick welded steel plate. To help add additional support, we added a vertical member inside the firewood box that's set back 150mm. In the substrate, we've pocketed in 40mm box section steel to add more support over the span of the bench. In this design, the steel support in the substrate is completely hidden, and the vertical support in the firewood box is set back 150mm, which means it's not very visible, especially when the box is filled with firewood. Floating shelves are another great example. We often need to adjust the thickness or the construction method of the shelves to ensure adequate support. And depending on whether we're going to be using wall cleats or threaded rod, or even a custom fabricated bracket that needs to go in the wall, we need to coordinate with the builder and maybe get in before plaster. Services integration is another aspect of joinery design that needs to happen early. Let's take HVAC access panels, for example. We learned early on that the HVAC units that live on top of joinery need to have their filters replaced every few months. Most commonly, we'll see a removable top panel that can be unscrewed from the top of the carcass, pulled down, and have the filters replaced. Once done, that panel can be put up and screwed back in. The problem we see with this design is it adds a lot of friction to something that needs to be done very often. So either the filters are a real pain to change, or they just don't get changed and the indoor air quality suffers. That's why we developed this fold-down flap design that uses lamello biscuits and an Allen key to toggle the door open and shut. You toggle the lamello, open the door, change the filters, push the door back up, close the toggles, and you're done. If there's hydronic heating running through a house, that manifold will often live inside a cabinet. That's where we need to create an access hatch so that technician can come, open it up, and service the unit. Tempering valves, let's say in a bathroom, will often live in the ceiling or a wall, but sometimes they'll be behind joinery. That's where we need to create an access hatch so that the plumber can come and adjust the temperature of the taps. Now, these services require less frequent access than something like an aircon unit above joinery. But if we don't plan for it early in the shop drawing process, it's much harder to create an elegant solution once we're on site. Now, what about LED lighting? What's the spec of the extrusion? Where's the LED driver going to live? Do we need to maybe shorten a drawer so that the equipment can sit behind it? And how will the lights turn on? Will there be a switch? Maybe a sensor? If there's a sensor, will it need to go in the door? Will it need to be rebated into the carcass? These are all important questions that we ask in that review process. Which brings us to appliances, and this is a big topic. Let's just look at a few key examples. Dishwasher heights are really important, especially if it's an XXL model, say from Miele. You might have a 900 or a 920 bench, which you think is plenty, but between the thick stone apron and maybe the finger pull rail, you suddenly realize you've run out of space and the dishwasher no longer fits. For integrated fridges, most designers don't want to see the front edge of a vertical end panel. That's where we need to be strategic about where we place the fridge. Does it need to be next to another cabinet so that we don't need an end panel? Maybe we can't put it next to an oven because then we won't be able to get the right fixing in. With range hoods, if the client or the architect has gone to the trouble of specifying a unit with an off-board motor and maybe solid ducting, we better coordinate with the builder to make sure that we can get that ducting out of the cabinetry through a roof penetration or maybe straight out the back wall. And then there are heaps of other considerations we need to make for all the other appliances. Is the cooktop going to clash with an oven that sits below it? Is the sink going to be top mount, maybe under mount? Is the cooktop going to be top mount or maybe flush mount? Is there enough room in the sink cupboard for the incinerator with the zip tap? Have we allowed for ventilation into that sink cupboard? And is all of that going to fit next to the caddy for your sponges and your tea towels? These are the sorts of things that we need to think about and flag early so that we can work with the designer and make sure we're not compromising on the design intent. Now that leads us finally to the user experience. At the end of the day, the customer is going to move into the home and they need to live with the joinery and enjoy it day to day. That's why we need to consider things beyond the design intent and the buildability and make sure that the joinery is going to deliver them a great experience. Now, this could involve really simple things like reviewing for obstructions. How does the joinery actually sit in the room relative to its surroundings? Is the handle on a door going to hit the wall as it opens? Will a drawer perhaps hit a windowsill if we don't add a wider filler? Or maybe a door will be in conflict with an oversized piece of skirting. These things become really obvious once on site, but we should be picking up on them in the drawing stage. Here's a niche one, but I think it's quite interesting. In a curved cupboard with a curved adjustable shelf, we don't sit that shelf on top of the adjustable shelf pins. Instead, we cut a slot in the side of the shelves and then slide it over the shelf pins. That way, it's a really well supported system that means the shelf won't tilt if there's something heavy placed on the front, but it will still remain adjustable. Now, this one has to be one of my favorites, and that's drawer matting. When a client finally moves into their kitchen, the great majority of the time, they're going to go out and find some sort of matting for their drawers. They'd have to find the right product, then cut every one to the right size for each drawer. It's a lot of work. So we figured, why don't we do it for them? We found this awesome German-made product called Agoform from one of our suppliers, and now we just put them in every kitchen. They feel great, perform well, and they add to the experience. We also put 25mm thick adjustable shelves on all our cupboards because, first of all, I think it looks cool visually. And for wider cupboards and shelves that have heavy items on them, it is going to reduce deflection. So there you go. There's a little snapshot of the things we're reviewing when we're looking at every new project. There's a lot more to it, but I hope there was something today that was valuable and perhaps actionable that you can take away.